Yesterday, I saw this post introducing Claude Code Tasks. So I spent a little bit of time this morning digging into what they are, and I thought I'd take a minute to show you what Claude Tasks are, how to use them, and most importantly, how to use them effectively, because out of the box, it's easy to miss some of the subtleties. So here I am. I have this, in this case, a fictitious ticket. It's make dark mode look beautiful. So I created a PRD here with an app I'm working on called Ralph Blaster. But this just went ahead and created a pretty detailed, elaborate PRD to make dark mode look beautiful. And now I'm going to show you what happens before Claude Tasks and then after. And the first thing I should mention before I forget is make sure to upgrade your Claude code, because if you don't upgrade as of the last 24 hours or so, this will not work. So in the first case, I literally just opened Claude code and I dumped the entire PRD in here and I said implement this PRD. So the way Claude Code has been working most recently, actually, sorry, that's the wrong window. This one, it goes into plan mode and it generated a plan, which is sort of like another PRD. And it's looking pretty good. It's got a bunch of steps, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and on and on. And this is cool, but you've probably noticed that oftentimes, well, this will all run at once. It will run in one context. So a few things happen. Often it forgets where it is. It forgets to-dos. It isn't guaranteed to be thorough because it's trying to hold a whole bunch of information sort of in memory. And also, once the context gets filled up, it compacts it. And then it's not always that smart knowing what it should keep in compact and what it throws away. So oftentimes your mileage may vary. You don't know always what you're going to get because its memory is not so great. So anyway, I paused this one here, but what this did is it made a plan and it's going to just go on and start executing it in one big go. And so we've discussed the issues there. And then, so the next is what I did is I upgraded my Claude code and I tried again. And I dumped the PRD in. And this time I said, well, actually I just tried again the first time thinking, oh, well, I've upgraded Claude code. It now has tasks. Let's just see what it does. So I threw the PRD in. It wasn't really any different than before I upgraded. So then I dumped the PRD in again and I said, please generate tasks out of this PRD to execute. And so what it did is it went in and created a bunch of tasks, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like on your system. But I'm going to skip ahead for a second and tell you that what I realized was even better is to say break these into tasks to be completed by sub-agents. And that is critical for probably obvious reasons, but I'll dive into it again in a moment. What I'm going to show you now is what happens on your system when you use tasks or when you get Claude Code to use tasks. So this is my user.claude folder, and this task folder here that you see was not in here before today. And if I go into it, I can see these sort of cryptic IDs from some of my sessions. And I'm going to go into this most recent one. And what you see is, in this case, I don't know, maybe 30 JSON files or something, 21 JSON files. So if I open one, we will see that it broke down my PRD into a whole bunch of tasks in a smart way. And this is great because when I initially saw Claude Tasks, I thought, okay, well, I will create a bunch of tasks. I will create like a to-do list and it will just churn through it. Well, this is even better, I think. I don't have to come up with the broken down detailed tasks. I just come up with the bigger picture. Claude Tasks does it all for me. So again, here's the first little task it created. And let's just view a couple more. What you see is the subject, which is basically the overview of the task, and then more detailed description, the status of it. And what's cool about that, obviously, is if anything gets interrupted and it needs to resume, it knows exactly where it was down to the specific task, as opposed to trying to keep track where it is throughout the entire picture here. These blocks IDs, this is great. This tells us what other tickets this blocks or is blocked by. So this, if you run these tasks in multiple agents, they now can run in parallel, knowing what is and is not okay to run at any given time. That's super cool. So now, let me actually show you that in a different way. I hopped over here in another instance of Claude Code and I said, look at the 21 tasks in this project and give me a visual hierarchy of their dependencies and the order that they can be executed. And this is super cool. Tasks 6 and 8 actually have no dependencies. Start with those. Those can be run in parallel or sequentially, doesn't matter. After that, we can move on to these other big blocks of tasks. And again, these can be run in parallel as long as the dependencies have been completed before then. Super cool. All right, so now I'm gonna hop over and just show you what happened when I said break this into tasks to be completed by subagents. So we just saw all the individual files, but here, as you run it in the log, it shows you all the tasks that were created, and then it went through and it said, let me set task dependencies to establish a logical workflow. We just saw the result of that. Pretty cool. So now it's created the tasks, and we keep going down here. It stopped. It stopped when it was done creating the tasks and the dependency. And I paused this so that you could see what it looked like, but I said, start implementing these tasks. And actually the first time I did that, it just was going in sequential order, just one by one in one context. And then I said, start implementing these in parallel when possible with different subagents. And look what happened. It kicked off the first two, 6 and 8, as we saw that those could run in parallel and needed to be run before anything else. And it ran, it says 2 agents finished, but it's actually because I paused it. I'll say continue to see what happens here, but it should pick right up where it left off. So it's going to run 2 agents at once, and it's going to move on to the next and crank its way through. So far I have not seen this max out a context, and in theory it shouldn't, because it's running all the separate subagents. So now if we're comparing this to Ralph, because I've already had questions about how does this compare to Ralph, I think there are a few subtle differences. A big one is obviously that this is much less complex in the sense of, like, Ralph is a bash script. It's not terribly complex, but it sort of is. Like, it's trying to manage another system. It's trying to manage Claude Code. This is just Claude Code sort of knowing what to do on its own. So that's cool. This also knows where it left off, which is also something that Ralph does, which is cool. But again, this is all sort of built in. So far, this wins in my book, and we'll see what limitations it hits. Again, being able to use subagents seems like a game changer, because a lot of the other value in Ralph was that it used a new context for each task that it ran, which is cool. In this case, it shouldn't use up as much context, and it can know where it is and communicate through these task files. So there you go. That's the overview, and I hope that was helpful.